Welcome to A Deeper Dive. This podcast is an extension of our Sunday sermons, a place where we slow down, ask better questions, and talk through God's Word together. Each episode, we'll revisit ideas from Sunday and spend time on the parts we didn't get to fully unpack. Whether you're listening on your commute, at home, or in a quiet moment, our prayer is that this conversation helps you grow in understanding and faith. Thanks for being here. Let's take a deeper dive. Welcome back to another episode of Deeper Dive. We're in Genesis still. This is part 2 of what we started last week. We started with the fallout of the fall. Today we're going to get into relationships, work, and the hope of restoration that we have.
Yeah.
Excited.
It's a good passage.
Yes.
Really good passage.
Yeah. So last week we focused on the story within this passage.
Mm-hmm.
Yesterday in the sermon you focused on the speeches that happen, right?
Mm-hmm.
So just remind us, how do all of these fit together?
I think it's really important to see that we have the story and the speeches is it's not artificial, it's a different genre.
Mm-hmm.
So there are 2 different genres in this passage, but they're really tied together in some pretty important ways. Yeah. One way that they're tied together is actually structurally, because if you look at let me clarify the story. What we're calling the story is when Moses is just telling what happened.
Yes.
Beginning of verse 7, he goes all the way through verse 13,
Mm-hmm.
and then in verses 20 through 24, which is what we looked at last week.
Right.
But then what we're calling the speeches is the poetry side, and that's where God gives his judgment speeches, which is what we focused on yesterday. Mm-hmm. So structurally what happens is in verse 9, when God starts speaking to the man,
Mm-hmm.
he says, "Where are you?" And then
Yep.
there's this dialogue. So it goes from story actually to a little dialogue,
Mm-hmm.
then to God just full speeches, and then back to full story.
Hmm.
But when they start dialoguing, it's interesting because God first confronts Adam.
Right.
Then he confronts Eve once Adam deflects,
Mm-hmm.
then Eve. And many people say Eve blamed the serpent.
Right.
If you read it closely, it's not necessarily. She's just stating what happened.
Yeah.
She says, the serpent deceived me and I ate.
Yeah.
Which is exactly what
exactly
happened.
how it happened.
She got hoodwinked.
Yep.
So, but then God moves from confronting the woman, then he speaks to the serpent.
Mm-hmm.
Then he goes back to the woman in the speeches and then back to the man. So it goes man,
Mm-hmm.
woman, serpent, but the serpent doesn't get any dialogue.
Right.
God just straight out just says, "You're toast."
Yep.
And then
Yeah.
and then he goes back to the woman and then to the man.
Huh.
So on Wednesday nights 2 weeks ago, I was teaching about structure
Mm-hmm.
when we're reading a passage. And this is what's called a chiasm.
Okay.
So it goes from man to woman to serpent,
Mm-hmm.
back to woman, back to man. So there's like the 2 man sections
Right.
parallel, the 2 woman sections parallel,
That's
and then the serpent's in the middle.
Mm-hmm.
So what it does, it really focuses our attention on the serpent's curse.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah,
Okay,
which is how we ended the sermon yesterday.
Yeah.
So that's one way that they're connected. And then thematically, they're super connected because, for instance, after we read the speeches of man,
Mm-hmm.
we realize that the ground is going to kick back, like we talked about yesterday.
Yep.
So then at the end of the chapter, when God drives him out in verse 23, it says the Lord sent him out from the garden to work the ground from which he was taken. So we already know, we've been told that his work's going to get really hard outside the garden.
Yeah.
So that's where there's kind of and there's others, but that's a real simple thematic connection of how the speeches and the story are tied together.
That's good. Okay, so when we read Genesis 3:16 yesterday, when you made that connection point of the language behind desire and rule, right? Both Ellie and I are sitting there like, oh, like that. It was like a light bulb. Like, oh, didn't know that was the actual meaning behind it. So let's hit it back again. So why is Genesis 3:16 like such a difficult verse to interpret?
Yeah, it's difficult because that language, that idea of desire, that word desire, is only used 3 times in the Hebrew Bible. Once in chapter 3,
Okay.
once in chapter 4, and once in the Song of Solomon.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's a more rare term,
Mm-hmm.
but it's also difficult, we might say, in just the application of what that looks, the specifics of what that looks
Right.
like. So what does it mean that her desire is for her husband? And what we're going to see next week, and I'll highlight next week in our podcast, is that Genesis chapter 3 and 4 mirror each other in numerous ways. And so I'm very thankful because that, like I read yesterday, chapter 4, verse 7 is the exact same phrase for both like the rule and the desire part.
Yep.
Except instead of talking about man and woman, it's talking about sin and Cain. So it really gives us a window, so to speak, in how to better understand it.
Okay.
And it protects us from some interpretations. You know, there's been some crazy interpretations that come out of this about, like, basically I would say in ways that degrade women.
Right.
And that helps us understand, no, this is her desire means that she's going to try to actually control her husband.
Yep.
And then the husband's going to rule over her. And so that's where you get into the... So, yeah, 4-7's a really... Here, I'll read it since some people might not have heard it. Yeah. So in 4-7, this is going to be a key focus this week in my sermon, but when Cain is just about to kill Abel, God warns him, and he tells him, its desire is for you. That's talking about sin, and you must rule over it. Yeah. Those are the exact lines.
Wow.
And so that helps us, because that one's clear.
Yep.
Sin's crouching at the door. It wants you. It's going to dominate you, but you have to rule over it. Puts us back in Genesis 3:16.
That's really good. Huh. Okay. So, continuing to move into speeches. Why did God start with Adam? Why did he specifically address Adam when he began?
Oh, you're talking about on the confrontations.
Yes. Sorry.
Yes.
On the confrontations. Yep.
No, we talked about this a few weeks ago about male leadership. Right. And so this gets us a little deeper in that conversation. We talked about last week how we're told that Adam ate it before we then get into the consequences. And what's significant this week is God goes first to the man to confront him regarding the eating of the fruit, even though Eve ate first.
Yep.
And then we get in the judgment speeches, and God, so in both the serpent's judgment speech and the man's judgment speech, God gives the reason why he's judging them.
Right.
So the serpent, he says, because you have done this. In other words, everything before. Yeah. And then the man, he says, because you have listened to the voice of your wife and have eaten of the tree of which I commanded you should not eat of it. So God is condemning man for two things. One is for listening to Eve and then for eating the fruit.
Yeah.
But when you look at Eve's judgment speech, she gets the shortest. And Ken Matthews points out there is no state. God doesn't point out anything that the woman did wrong. That's not to say she's innocent.
Right.
But it shows that the buck stops with Adam. Yeah. And so he's the one that's confronted both for eating and for listening to Eve in that regard.
And that goes
Is that what you were asking?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, because that then ties back into, that Adam, based off the language, like Adam was standing there.
Yes.
As it all happened.
Exactly.
So, yeah.
And it's interesting because he uses the phrase, you've listened to the voice of your wife. Because in Genesis 3:6, it just tells us she took the fruit, ate, and then gave some to her husband. It doesn't really record a conversation.
Oh, yeah.
So we assume there was a conversation there.
Yep.
In which Adam partook. Which matches really the rest of the Bible. I think when we were at the football field, when we were at the stadium, we read Romans 5.
Yep.
Where it talks about Adam. Well, it talks about the first Adam and then Jesus is the second Adam. And so all through Scripture, Adam is the one who's faulted for the fall, which would make sense in the understanding of him as the leader in that scenario.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah,
that's good. So,
can I hit one more thing on
that? Yeah, no, get it.
So going back to 3:16 with the idea of him ruling over her, that word "rule" there is actually a pretty neutral term. So it's not saying his rule is going to be abusive.
Right.
Which again sometimes gets interpreted out. It's a more neutral, but in human history we have seen sinfulness does lead to abusive situations. Yep. So it's just it almost might be the idea of here of like It could be the idea of like a leadership role in that sense, almost like a king ruling or something like that.
So same or not the same then with like the dominion?
Yeah. Oh, different. Good question. Different word than it's not the same as dominion.
Right.
So that's
Difference
important.
would be.
Yeah. Well, it's just a different word. It's a far less. Dominion is getting. I would say both men and women have dominion over the creation. This would be more of a leadership role.
Okay.
Is where I would.
That's good.
Yeah. And it's dependent on context.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's good. So to hit back on again, we see what happens. I mean, they eat, right? So we recounted the story last week. So just touch on it again. I think that this isn't the last time that we're going to talk about it. But why is eating such a central theme in Genesis 3?
Yeah. So John Selhammer points out that when you read the punishment speech to Adam, it's just the theme of there's two. Well, the eating and then ground just keep coming up.
Yeah.
So it's all about, you shall not eat of it. Then he says, you in pain you're going to eat. You're going to eat the plants of the field. Then it says, by the sweat of the brow you're going to eat. I mean, eating is everywhere in here. Yeah. And then the reason it's significant in this situation is because it shows how the consequence is tied to the crime.
Right.
So the crime was they ate of the forbidden fruit. And so now in their eating, in kind of like yesterday when I talked about how in Eve's pain in childbirth, in the very act that God gave them to fulfill his command of being fruitful and multiply, the woman would experience pain. So too, in the very command that God gave them, remember back in chapter 2, God said, "Man, freely eat of all these trees except for this one." So now there's a correspondence between what Adam had, and now a reminder in his punishment of the consequences of his rebellion. Yeah. So his eating goes from enjoying all the good food to now sweat and toil and eating. Eating in pain and toil, so to speak.
Okay. What's the connection between the eating and sin? Like, how does it shape our understanding of sin? Like, I think parallels here, and then through the rest of Scripture, we'll see.
Yeah. No, I think what we see. We did talk about this recently. Is this idea of, first of all, it shows that eating is a part of our obedience to God, how we eat. And in the case of the story of Genesis 3, the eating is done in a way that's forbidden.
Right.
But I think there's other ways that our eating relates to our relationship with the Lord. And in our context, it would be more of the consumption mentality, overeating, or just, I think when we talked about this last time, I quoted Paul when he was talking about, who was he talking about? I think he was talking about the Cretans. Or maybe the Philippians. I can't remember, but he has this phrase, their God is their belly. Yep. And I think when we're ruled by our appetites, whether that's, you can be ruled by your appetites through overeating, and you can also be ruled by your appetites by just an over-obsession with eating or diet or whatever. And so I think that's getting at the heart of how we oftentimes see it today.
Okay. So it's reflected so that's how we see it through the lens now of what happened with sin. So to kind of play off of what we'll see in Genesis 4 of ruling over sin, what is this? And I'm getting into the practical application soon here, but what are some ways that we can then take that sin and replace it with the spiritual discipline
of
specifically for eating?
For eating. The obvious answer there is the spiritual discipline of practice. I'll get it right. The spiritual discipline of fasting.
Yes.
I think that is a key spiritual discipline for American Christians, because everything that we do is all about consumption, and to be honest, usually overconsumption. Yep. And so the regular practice of fasting helps us reminding of the importance of self-control, temperance, to use a more ancient term, of abstaining, of withholding, stuff like that helps us. But so the eating is both intricately related back to the sin, and I think what you're pushing us forward to is how even in our lives today, our eating is a key part of our spiritual walk.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Well, playing off of eating again, serpent's curse. I was going to keep on tying everything.
Yeah, that's good.
But eating the dust,
oh yeah, that's good.
crawling on his belly.
Yeah.
What does that symbolize?
That's good. I didn't have a chance to hit this yesterday, so this is why I love our podcast. Because I was like, oh, that's not going to have time.
I'll go for
so
next.
delete.
Yep.
Okay. So this is great because yesterday I hit how he was cursed.
Mm-hmm.
And I love the Yes, I do love the serpent's curse.
Yeah,
I'm glad
we
he's cursed.
love the serpent.
We love the serpent's curse. And just to remind from what I said yesterday, it is significant that the serpent was cursed, but not Adam and Eve.
Right.
Because Adam and Eve, we're going to see in 3 weeks, we're going to see how God's creation blessing continues to go through Adam and Eve in the sense of childbirth.
Yeah.
But the serpent's cursed. God's against him. And if you remember in chapter 3, verse 1, it says the serpent was more crafty than any of the beasts of the field. Yeah. Now he's more cursed than the beasts of the field. And it also adds livestock. So it adds another word. So yes.
Is there significance between him including both of those? I mean, curse you above all.
Yeah.
And of the livestock.
It's like a lot. Oh yeah. So in the Hebrew conception, so the livestock would be your domesticated animals.
Okay. Yeah.
Beasts of the field would be your lions and tigers and bears.
Oh my.
Right. Oh my. Yeah.
Yep.
So those are the two categories of what we might say land animals, except in Genesis 1, there's a third category, the creeping things.
Yep.
Those little things that run on the ground. Mm-hmm. But as far as the big animals, you've got livestock and beasts of the field. Yeah. So the serpent is actually put in the beasts of the field in verse 1 of chapter 3. Mm-hmm. But here it's beasts of the field plus livestock. He's cursed more than all of that. Which gets us to the belly part.
Right.
So on your belly you should go. A lot of people immediately assume that the serpent then therefore was like standing up, had legs. So you get this weird imagery. Yep. Maybe. Mm-hmm. The problem is we don't know.
Right.
We don't know. I tend to just think he was a normal serpent. Mm-hmm. But the belly cursing is important. And Wenham connects it to Leviticus 11 and the unclean animals.
Okay.
So Leviticus 11:42 says, whatever goes on its belly and whatever goes on all fours or whatever has many feet, so a lot of categories, any swarming thing that swarms on the ground, you shall not eat, for they are detestable. Yeah. So the on your belly for Wenham connects to unclean animal, right? Which for Israel would be an abomination. Yep. Or detestable, as the ESV says there. So that's the belly part. Okay. And then the dust eating dust is a symbol of defeat. One of my favorite psalms is Psalm 72 because it's a messianic psalm. This prayer for the Messiah rule over all the nations. Right. And in Psalm 72:9 it says, "May the desert tribes bow down before him." That's talking about the Davidic king. And it says, "And may his enemies lick the dust." There you go. So a person who eats the dust, that's a symbol of defeat, shame. Yep. All the above. Good. Yeah.
So, and that's good because it just ties into the ultimate defeat of evil then, in the end.
Yes. Yeah. That's exactly right.
Well, let's see here. Well, okay. Here we go. Okay, so we've gone through there to continue in through their curses and through the speech. Hitting back now with man.
Yes. Yeah.
So you are dust, and to dust you shall return.
Yeah.
What is the meaning? Why is this? How does that? I mean, that connects all the way back to creation, and we can then tie it back all the way forward towards the. My mind's blanking. Fill in.
Resurrection.
Yes. Thank you.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes. Yeah.
That's what it is. Let's tie all that together.
So he uses at the end of verse 19 when he says, "By your sweat you shall eat your bread." He then ties that to it. Actually parallels verse 17 because in verse 17 he says, "In pain you shall eat of it all the days of your life."
Right.
Which is actually the same phrase we just looked at with the serpent, where he's going to eat dust all the days of your life. So there's this parallel between the serpent eating dust all the days of its life, and then man is going to eat of the ground in pain all the days of his life. But then when he repeats it and talks about by sweat, you're going to eat bread. Instead of saying all the days of your life, he says, till you return to the ground. So he's defining man's life as dust to dust.
Yep.
Because then he says, for out of it you were taken, which is what you were just talking about. That puts us back in chapter 2.
Right.
Where God forms the man from the dust. So now he's saying you're just going to go back to dirt.
Yeah. You
were dirt, you go back to dirt. Because, he says, for you are dust, and to dust you shall return. Okay. So it's a little jab emphasizing like I said in chapter 2, the humility of humans. They were a pile of dirt, a pile of mud.
Yep.
But we have to be careful that we don't read this in like a sense in which we might say humans completely cease to exist at death.
Right. Because
we also know back in chapter 2 that God breathed in them the breath of life. So we have souls. And so because we have a soul, when we die, our bodies still go back to dust.
Yep.
But our souls are, as Paul says, to be absent from the bodies, to be present with the Lord.
Right.
But that's just a temporary phase because we're waiting our resurrected bodies, which is where the so to speak, the dust is reassembled.
Yep.
And that's pretty cool thought that we go from dust to reassembled dust.
It's funny. I remember just growing up, like, because reading this and then also looking ahead of, a resurrection, the body, and thinking of like, what about, it's morbid, but the people, at sea.
Yes.
The sailors, when they would have like the ocean burial, and that's all the different fish, which are then, and it just continues to go. And it's just like, all right. It just, again, I think ultimately it points towards just power of God.
That's right.
Here we go.
You can bring
it all back.
Everybody. Yeah, that's good.
It's crazy.
That's good.
It is.
I can ask you one more. I can throw out another question on this because a lot of people get hung up on the fact that God tells him in chapter 2, on the day that you eat of it, you will surely die.
Right.
Like, he didn't die instantly.
Yeah.
So there's a few approaches there. One is on the day doesn't necessarily, like, we're super precise.
Yes.
On the day can be more general, like when that happens. Like, for instance, in the prophets, it talks about what's going to happen in the last day.
Right.
Or the last days. And that is
it's a very long
series of events. Yeah. But the other thing is that the removal, and we might have talked about this last week, I can't remember, but if we did, it's okay. It's good to know. Removal from the garden, we might term that.
Oh yeah, I think we did
a spiritual death because they're being removed from the life of God.
Yep.
And in 2 weeks or 3 weeks, whenever it is, when we hit chapter 5, we're going to see the dust part really start. The dust start kicking up the dust with dead bodies, so to speak. Because you get this genealogy. It's like he died 10 times.
Yep.
Or 9. Enoch doesn't die.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
That
is good. I think another thing, this is another part of growing up and the fun of, I think this probably falls into, this is a more out there probably approach, but even of the tree of life.
Yeah.
And that, God designed the fruit and then looking at, and man ate of it, right?
Yeah.
And I know there's another
approach. Tree of knowledge of good and evil?
No.
Because man didn't eat tree of life.
Oh. Wait.
Remember he blocked the way to the tree of life with the cherubim?
Oh, at the end, yes.
Oh, you're talking about the end of Revelation.
I'm saying now, so both. So
okay.
Before the fall,
okay,
and then Revelation,
okay,
when man once again has access to the tree of life.
Yes. Okay, access. Yes.
Because then the idea is, there's something in that God has designed this fruit to continue to Oh,
I got you.
And that's another approach of also why it was guarded lest he live
That's right.
I think that's just another. There's fun things that can still be found that then we can look forward to.
Yes, yes.
And it's just
Well, that underscores also how the biblical story is very coherent.
Yes.
Because you get the garden, and then I've said it a few times, but what you get in one commentator says what you have in the New Jerusalem is a city park that looks like Eden.
Yes.
So you have Eden 1 and Eden 2.
Yep. Yeah, I love that imagery. Even the concept of, so it's a new earth, and yes, ultimately we're there glorifying God.
Yep.
Praising Him, worshiping because He's there. But it's a new earth. There's going to be things to do, explore.
Yeah, that's right.
But it's that same imagery. Yeah, exactly. Of returning back to essentially, I mean, we saw reading the Old Testament now, and what we're going to eventually, well, we won't get into it, but they would return back to their hometown, like to sacrifice and do their, and like, times.
Yeah.
But even that, returning to the New Jerusalem, and it would assume taking part of the tree of life.
Yeah.
And then like, it's just a fun that, again, it's coherent. Exactly.
Yeah.
Keep on returning back, and you're there, and it's just, I know, it's exciting.
It is.
It's fun.
It's really cool. Yeah.
Okay. Well, and the not exciting part.
Uh-oh.
How did the fall affect our work?
Oh, gosh.
Because things changed.
Monday mornings came, right?
Yep.
That's right.
Yes,
Monday mornings. Yeah, so I talked yesterday about just all the hardships that we experience, all the struggles you experience in work as a result of the fall. Work was easy and fulfilling. And I read Isaiah 65 yesterday, where that passage where he says, you'll no longer labor in vain.
Right.
There's so much about our work that, in modern times that just feels like vanity. Yeah. I'm not gardening this summer, but I used to garden, and I can just remember so many years you plant, like, just use the words, you use squash.
Yeah.
And you'd spend all the time preparing your soil. You'd put them in the ground, and they come up, and you'd be like, oh, these are going to be amazing. Mm-hmm. And then they get in rot. Yeah. And you're like, oh, all that work for nothing.
Yep.
And that's how so much of life feels. It's just like, man, I did all this, and it just nothing. Yeah. And we won't have to worry about that in the new earth, because our work will not be in vain, and God will always enjoy the work of our hands. Yeah. It'll be a beautiful thing. But yes, so sorry, I'm getting a little ahead there.
No, it's good.
But yes, so today I would say everything that is toilsome, everything that is frustrating, all the hardships of our work, which, again, for most people that we would say that's your job.
Right.
But I think about a retired person, they're not going to a job, but they're hopefully still working. Mm-hmm. They're still doing something productive, something to either garden or do something. Yeah. There's frustrations in everything. And when you do that, it's a reminder of the fall.
Yeah. That was good a tie-in yesterday of just, and I think in my head, maybe the curse of the ground. Mm-hmm. I've always just been like linear, okay, on the ground. Mm-hmm. And that is a super, super clear picture in my mind growing up in the Ozarks, where literally, we grow rocks. And it's just, and it's always been tied to that. But even, like we were saying yesterday, like, okay, the limb that falls and damages the house and like things like that of like, it is just that picture that, we are surrounded by the consequences of the fall in creation. Yeah. And it's and creation is still so beautiful. It's like, again, another part of the excitement of looking forward to what we have. But it was good to tie it outside of just, I think, farming, gardening.
Yes.
It's everyone. Yeah. And it's that, I think that word, that toilsome. And,
Well, and my justification for extending it beyond just agriculture, which is the context in Genesis 3, right? Is what we read yesterday during our service when Laura read yesterday, right? Yeah. Yep. Laura read Romans 8.
Yes.
Where it talks about the creation itself is groaning, awaiting for the redemption of the children of men. And so the idea of the creation groaning gets us back to what theologians refer to as not just the curse of the ground, but the curse of all creation. It's the curse of creation. Yep. So the ground is maybe, we might say, the representative, but it's we live in a world that is experiencing the curse, and it's groaning. And so that's why I would include like natural disasters, all that stuff, and then we feel the effects of that every day we go to work.
Yeah, absolutely. That was good. Yeah.
So yesterday I used I think I did. I'm pretty sure I talked about how in the new earth, like, we'll enjoy 100% of our job.
Yes.
Well, I ran across a stat. You'll like this, actually, because I think the stat, it was based on a 2009 Mayo Clinic study of nurses and doctors. Oh, yeah. And what they found is that if somebody enjoyed 20% or more of their job, if you enjoy at least 20% of your job, so if you can hit the 20% mark, if you enjoy 20% of your job, it increases your likelihood for less burnout and physical. So, but if you enjoy less than that number, so like if you only enjoy 18% of your job, your chances of burnout and physical and mental burnout from your job actually go up.
I believe that. I can't imagine just sitting there doing something that you only enjoy.
But isn't
maybe
that astounding that the line is at 20%? So like if I enjoy just one out of 5 things I do at my job, then that means that I'm going to actually not burn out, that I enjoy my job.
That's crazy.
So just imagine, think about that with your job. Like all of the tasks you do, and if you just enjoy 20% of them, then you're sitting good. Yeah. But imagine the new earth where you enjoy 100%. Like there's no bad days at the office.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
That's good. So you kind of hit on it yesterday, blue collar, white collar.
Yeah.
Everyone partakes of the curse. Mm-hmm. What of those who are not employed?
Yeah. James McEwen, he argues that I'll read a quote from him. He says that unemployment is just as much as of the curse as the sort of hard labor that Adam was sentenced to. So there is a sense in which unemployment, and we see this statistically. You see this, like they're just people don't do well. When they don't have work to do.
Agreed.
And that's what's important to see, is that this is why I put work as one of the good gifts that God gives us in Genesis chapter 2. Because you remember that sermon I talked about, there's 4 good gifts in the garden.
Right.
And work was one of them. And I tied it to I was alliterating, I did P's, and I tied it to the word purpose. Because work gives us this daily purpose in life that you see people really shrivel up emotionally and in many ways when they don't have a job, when they don't have work to do. Yeah. And so that's where I think it shows the most in human dignity. Like work helps us have dignity that is tied to the image of God that we sometimes lose if we don't have. And again, this doesn't mean that if you're unemployed, you're less than, but it shows the value of work. So even in a person who might be unemployed, the goal would be let me do something that
adds purpose
and brings value to the world or to the people around me. Kind of the idea of working as for the Lord. On that side of things.
Okay, so we talked yesterday as well. Talked about a calling. Kind of just go back on that. And hit on how that's changed, where that kind of came from, because in my mind that's a very new. I saw that this is your calling, and it's like, and people talk about this a lot now, and most honestly use it now as an excuse for why they're getting out of what they were doing. So as far as the younger of like, like it's just not my calling, or I've got a call. It's an excuse of I have a calling. Now sometimes it's legitimate.
Yes.
Especially like if it's a ministry type thing, it's like, okay, I'm not gonna question you necessarily.
To some extent, it's like the Trump card, right?
Exactly. Yeah. But they can use it as an excuse of, I have a calling to go do this. Out of here.
Yes, like an escape.
Yes. Which sometimes that can be legit, but where does that came from? It's not really a new concept, is it?
Yeah. So first of all, it's important to think about it biblically. So New Testament wise, the word calling is not, I don't want to say never, but I'm pretty positive it almost might be 100%. When the New Testament is using the language of us being called, it almost always uses it to refer to our salvation. So all Christians are called in salvation. Right. So that's our calling. Now, what we talk about today is the idea of what's called vocation.
Yes.
I think that's what you're talking about. Like, I'm called to this ministry or this task. And what happened is there's a really good book, Gene Veith wrote a book, God at Work. And he shows how that during the Protestant Reformation, when the Protestants broke away from the Catholics, that was really recovered. This idea of, like, the Reformers emphasized that every person has a calling. And they emphasize how God works through means. So in other words, in the garden, like, the food just pops up in the Garden of Eden, right? But now we need farmers who are going to work and raise the crops for us to eat. So God always works through means. So he's always using, especially when it comes to our basic needs and even wants as humans, God is providing for us through other people. Right. So the idea of a calling is that we all have multiple callings. So you're about to be a dad. So that your calling right now is to be a good husband. Right. You're about to have a calling as a dad. You have a calling at your job. You have a ministry. So we all have multiple callings. Right. And God uses us in all those callings to serve others, but ultimately to serve Him.
Yeah.
So that's the idea of vocation. You'll hear the word vocation.
Yep.
That's what it means. I mean, because the Latin word this vocation is based on is the word to call.
Okay.
So we all have callings, and as we view our job as a calling, it gives us a different framework through which we can look at our job.
Yeah.
And to really see it as God is using me in this job that He's given me, and the gifting and the passions He's given me to actually serve others and meet their needs in a way that they might not be able to meet themselves.
Right.
So
That's good. That's a very clear difference.
And if I tie it back to, so again, it's funny. In the last 3 weeks, we've talked a lot about work and we've talked a lot about marriage.
Yep.
But what that shows is how the punishments tie directly into the purposes for which God created them.
Yeah. That's because marriage is the institution for which the go forth and multiply.
Yep.
Huh.
Yeah. And so, where's it going with that? So if we go back to the idea of work, 3 weeks ago when I talked about God's good gifts, I talked about the idea of work as worship.
Right.
So just saying work as calling is really saying the same thing, but it just frames it in a different way.
Yeah.
That I think helps people see.
That's good.
So that they can enjoy their 20% of their toil.
Yep. Do it as unto the Lord.
That's right.
That's your ultimate.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, we've gone over a lot of the consequences and
Yeah.
all this. We have hope still. So where in the middle of the fall, where do we see hope?
Yeah. We see it in the curse of the serpent.
Yeah.
And really, and specifically in verse 15. So again, if we think about the structure, that's kind of we're zooming in right there, and what we see is this idea of the one to come who's going to bruise the head of the serpent, and the serpent's going to bruise his heel. Yeah. But the use of the singular he and his there is what really tips us off. It's like, oh, there's going to be a single descendant of the woman who's going to take out the serpent. And it's not the serpent's offspring. So this serpent, we might say, has an afterlife after Genesis. And that afterlife goes all the way to Revelation.
Yep.
And I don't remember if we talked about, we did when we first, in chapter 3 when we first started, about how the serpent is not specifically connected to Satan.
Yes. Yeah.
But if you just trace through the story, you got a good idea before you get to Revelation chapter 12.
Yeah. Or is revealed ultimately is.
But the hope is that if you take out the serpent, therefore you cleanse God's world and there's restoration. And so that's why that verse gives so much hope. Because there is a hope of a world without a serpent. Right. Which is really cool to think about. Yeah. There's a saying, it's not clicking in my head, but it's something about take off the head of it's like a war. You know what I'm saying? Okay. It's like if you take off the head of the serpent, it's basically when if you're in a war and you kill the general, you take off.
You take out the whole army. Yeah.
So that's pretty apt metaphor here. Yeah. That's good. Yeah, just take out the serpent, and you've taken out the deception that led to all the sin, and God's enemy. Yeah. So if you had any question that the serpent was opposed to God in the first part of chapter 3, in verse 14 it becomes clear that it's on now. God's taken active measures against that serpent as well.
So the seed of the woman.
Yeah. Yep.
We already know.
Follow it through.
Know the end of the story.
Yeah, we do know the end of the story. And sometimes I think knowing the end of the story prevents us from reading Genesis and really the rest of the Old Testament with fresh lenses. Yeah. So I really, when we ask the question, who is this serpent crusher, as we read through Genesis, what we're going to see is we're going to be chasing these different lines. Yeah. That's why genealogies are so big in Genesis, is because we're wanting to follow what's going to become known as the line of promise. Right. So that we're going to just keep tracing it through. And so then by the time we get to the end of Genesis, we've got a little more narrowing. Yep. So right now it's just any descendant of a woman. Yep. Oh, okay.
This could be done really quick.
Yeah. Or it could be for a long time. But by the time we get to the end of Genesis, we get it pretty narrow. Yeah. Then further in the Old Testament, we get even more narrow, and then that gets us into the New Testament.
Yep. That's good. Huh. And we see it through the whole time. That is a good point too, though, of reading Old Testament through that lens of they didn't know. They didn't have the end of the story. They knew it was coming.
Yeah.
But then we get to read of the resurrected Christ.
Yeah.
And still see that ultimate restoration is coming.
There's a really cool verse though that's based off of this. I'm doing this on the fly, so let me make sure I get it. It's at the end of Romans, but Paul uses the same language to refer to us. I might be dead wrong. So I'm dead wrong. Just have to move it. But
keep moving.
Yeah. So here's what Paul says in Romans 16:20 to the church at Rome. He says, "The God of peace will soon crush Satan under your feet. The grace of our Lord Jesus be with you." So this really is where Paul. So first of all, it in Romans 16 before you get to Revelation.
Yeah.
Because he doesn't say he's going to crush the serpent.
Yeah.
He says he's going to crush Satan under your feet.
Wow.
But I love that imagery because it's this idea of we are co-heirs with Christ.
Yep.
We reign with Christ. And so because we know Jesus, the ultimate serpent crusher, we get to participate in the serpent crushing ourselves.
Wow. Yeah.
He's going to crush Satan under our feet as the church.
Yeah. That I hadn't thought about that. That's good. Okay. Well, we continue moving forward.
Yeah.
Next week, what do we got?
Next week, we're doing the entire chapter 4 in one Sunday.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. So it will it will load up, deeper dive.
Yep.
Because we just can't cover it all. But we're going to focus really on how sin continues to spread and focus on Cain and how Cain actually becomes the first human to be cursed in the story.
Yeah.
And where I'll really zone in on is that little phrase that I already read today is this idea of sin is crouching at your door. Its desire is for you, but you must rule over it. Yeah. And so we'll talk about, really the sermon will focus a good bit on temptation and how to approach temptation and see how that works out. So just kind of like yesterday when I talked about how in marriage we want skills, like actual skills are good. Like how do I handle conflict? How do I communicate well? But skills are worthless unless you're walking by the Spirit.
Yeah.
And so really the same thing applies to temptation. Like there are some practical steps we can take to avoid temptation, but also those practical steps are worthless unless you're walking by the Spirit.
Yep.
And so there's that balance as well, again, between skills and the Spirit, so to speak, in both. So a bit of overlap there. And then we'll get in a little bit in the curse of Cain, and then again, next week is cool. Sorry, I'm giving the whole sermon, but once again, chapter 4, like chapter 3, it leaves us at the end with a little bit of hope and a little bit of grace.
Yep.
So we see judgment, hope, and grace every time.
That's good.
So
look for the pattern.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm looking forward to it.
Well, so one thing we're going to start doing, eventually we'll probably do like a Q&A type podcast. And if you have questions over what we've already gone over, or the sermon that you listen to, feel free. I'll put a piece here in the podcast where you can actually go in and submit your questions. That way we have a bank to pull from. No promises that the question will be pulled, but we're going to have that available now and try to work that in the future. So excited. Thanks for today. Looking forward to next week.
Me too. That was a lot of fun. Yeah, thanks. Well, thank you so much for listening to A Deeper Dive. We hope that our conversations have been edifying as you continue to think about the passage that we looked at this past Sunday. Our prayer is that our discussions will help you not only gain a better understanding of God's Word, but that you will also fall deeper in love with Christ and that your life will reflect Him more and more each day as we both have these conversations and look at God's Word together on Sunday morning. We hope you will join us next time as together we take a deeper dive.